Are you ready to embrace a deeper, more intentional way of living? Introducing Deep Calls to Deep, Meditations for Your Spiritual Journey, Volume 1 by Brandon Andrus. Deep Calls to Deep offers a 1.5 years of weekly meditations to inspire spiritual growth and guide you toward a more meaningful, embodied life. Order your copy today wherever books are sold and begin your journey into greater connection and purpose. Deep Calls to Deep. Let your soul awaken.
Welcome to the Unbelief Podcast, your journey, actually our journey together beyond inherited beliefs to a spirituality that works for you. I'm your host, Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. We can fix that later, right? No? All right, you've reached another book club episode of the Unbelief Podcast, and today we are going to dive into a subject that normally will bore you when you are sitting next to your uncle at the holiday gathering, but I promise is absolutely fascinating when we look at the beginning of the book of Matthew. It's a genealogy. I get it. Genealogies are dumb and boring, unless you're into that kind of thing, which, no judgment. It's just not my thing. And it's probably not your nephew or niece's thing. So please, just let them off the hook. But really, the genealogy in Matthew is a guide to a bunch of different stories that really span everything from prostitution to murder to even a story that has been used to make people feel bad about masturbation. Yep, I said that right here at the beginning. Like I said, this is going to be so interesting. And what is maybe the most interesting about this, I think the sort of bigger thing that I want us to focus on is not the stories of the men in this genealogy, but the fact that there are so many women talked about in this genealogy. Remember, this is a patriarchal culture. And in a patriarchal culture, it's always this person was the son of this person, was the son of this person, was the son of this person. And it's all males all the way down. But the genealogy of Jesus is really different. It starts in Matthew chapter 1, the one that we're going to talk about today. Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, it says, an account of the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And now it's going to start with Abraham. It says, Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac was the father of Jacob, and Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. That's all normal. We know this lineage. If you have read the Bible or even heard the Bible taught, you probably have heard Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And we get all the way down to Judah and his brothers. And then it says, and Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. Whoa. Okay. Tamar is the name of a woman. And it should sort of stick out. And the people who first were hearing this, they would say, whoa, wait. Tamar? Why is there a woman referenced here? And the story of Tamar is insane. Okay, so here's how the story goes. It comes from Genesis chapter 38. And Judah actually has 3 sons, okay? And that's what's tracked here because, again, patriarchal culture, right? And Judah has 3 sons. The first son, the oldest son, is named E-R. And then there's a second son named Onan. And then a third son named Shelah. Okay, so we've got Onan, and Shelah. Now, the way this works in this culture is is the top dog. He's the firstborn. He's going to get a double portion of the inheritance. So right now there's 3 sons. It's going to be divided in thirds, but it's actually going to be divided where is going to get 2. And then, so most likely is going to get 50%. And then Onan and Shelah are going to get 25% each when Judah dies. So is the first person to get married. He's the oldest. And Judah has take Tamar as his wife. But it says, but was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Now, this happens before has any children. And if you understand how this sort of patriarchal lineage works, is going to get a double portion of the inheritance. He's going to have to take care of the family, and he needs to have a son that can inherit what he is inheriting. But he has none. Now, there was a way that this was supposed to be rectified in the ancient world. Now, this is important to note right here, because this happens over and over in the Bible, is you see things that are culturally decided, that how a culture deals with everything from marriage to raising children to who gets to have sex with whom, right? Like all of that is cultural and culturally decided. And it's a long, long time ago, which means that it's going to be very different from how our culture deals with those things. But it doesn't make that culture better or worse. Culture is neither good nor bad. Culture just is. And every culture is different. And every culture, if they use their cultural values to look back on another culture or even a contemporary culture, they will likely see things that they think are bad or weird or evil or whatever. And they will make value assessments on another culture from their cultural values. And yes, there are human things that should be universal, like assault and murder and all of those kind of things. But something like this, what happens when a husband and a wife have no kids in a culture where the women can't own property? And so in order for that woman to be taken care of and to be safe, that woman has to bear a son in order the son to own the things and them to be able to continue in this world. And so in the Bible, that problem is solved by something called a levirate marriage. So you can find this in Deuteronomy chapter 25. Starting in verse 5, it says that when one brother dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. So like in our culture today, if somebody dies, oftentimes the surviving spouse will get remarried and sometimes will actually have children with another person. But in this ancient Near Eastern culture, it is a tribal culture. It is not a bureaucratic culture like ours. And so it says we're not going to have her have a child with someone outside the family. And so instead of that, it says her husband's brother, so her brother-in-law shall, and it says go into her, and that means exactly what you think it means, taking her in marriage and performing the duty of a husband's brother to her, and the firstborn whom she bears shall succeed the name of the deceased brother. So when she bears a child, that child will not be counted as her brother-in-law's son, but will be counted as her original husband's son, so that the inheritance will flow from her original husband to her son. She will be taken care of and the crisis is averted. So back to Genesis chapter 38. Tamar was married to Ur. Ur dies. God, it says, kills Ur because Ur is wicked. And so then what that means is Ur's brother, the next in line, is now going to have to take Tamar as his wife. So it says Judah, the father, says to Onan, the brother of who died, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her. Raise up offspring for your brother." So this is Onan's job, right? He's the next in line. He's supposed to have a child with Tamar. And then here's the verse. It says, "But since Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, he spilled his semen on the ground whenever he went into his brother's wife, so that he would not give offspring to his brother. What he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also." Now, when I was growing up in the evangelical world, and you went to one of these purity retreats, purity weekends, purity whatever, the purity culture night at your local evangelical church, they would talk about masturbation. They would talk about Onan and tell you that it was evil to do that because Onan, it directly addresses it, they say, in the Genesis 38. Onan spilled his seed on the ground, that your seed is not meant for anyone but your wife. And so that's what's going on. And it says it was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, and God even put him to death, which, puts a lot of fear in people. And the reality is that's not what Onan's sin was. What Onan did that was displeasing in the sight of the Lord was he didn't father a child with his brother's wife, with his sister-in-law after his brother died. He did not complete the expectation of the levirate marriage. So for those of you who grew up in that same purity culture as I did, and maybe have been riddled with guilt for years because somebody told you that masturbation was a sin because of Onan, you are off the hook. God is not going to put you to death for that. We should pause there just to say that, this is the problem with going and looking for what you want to find in the Bible. Something to say what you need it to say because you've got this other agenda, right? You are in this purity culture and in whatever it is, and you're going back to find the support for what you say. You misread. You just misunderstand what's going on in the Bible. And it's important when you find something that seems kind of weird on the face of it like this to say, hang on, is there something cultural going on here that I don't understand? Yeah. There is. It's called the levirate marriage, and it seems weird, but cultures are weird. They're not good or bad. They just are. And so when that happens, just pump the brakes and either let it go or do a little bit more research. Okay, let's get back to this story of Tamar. So then Judah says, okay, Tamar, I've got one more son, and I'm going to pledge you to that son. And that son is Shelah. But Shelah is not old enough to get married. And so we're going to let you just hang out until Shelah grows up. And it says because he feared that Shelah too would die like his brothers. So Tamar goes to live back home with her family. And that is deeply shameful. It's deeply shameful, not just to her, it's deeply shameful to Judah, because what should happen is at this point, it's Judah's job to have a son with his daughter-in-law. Because Judah is what would be considered the kinsman redeemer, that he's got to set things right. That's his job. So he's going to have to do that if his son can't for one reason or another. He doesn't, which is shameful. And Tamar is going to have to take this in her own hands. And so it says that Tamar gets the word that her father-in-law, Judah, is going to go up to an area called Timnah to shear sheep. And so she took off her like mourning widow's garments, puts on a veil, wraps herself up, and goes down where she knows Judah is going to pass by. Now it tells us here, gives a little note just to like really underscore the fact that she's in the right. It says Shelah was grown up and she had not been given to him in marriage. So it's past the time where Judah should have even made good on his promise. He has not. She's taking it in her own hands. It says, when Judah saw her, he thought her to be a prostitute, for she had covered her face. And so he goes over to her at the roadside and he says, come, let me come into you. Right. And we know that this is like a euphemism. Right. And it says he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what will you give me that you may come into me? He said, I'll send you a kid from the flock. And she said, no. Only if you give me a pledge until you send it. And he asks, well, what should I give you? And she says, give me your signet and a cord and the staff that is in your hand. And all of this is a symbol of who he is. These are all unique things to Judah. And it says he gave them to her and he goes into her and she conceived by him. So she gets up and puts back the garments of her widowhood. And then when Judah sends the kid, right, back to the place where he found her, it's not there. She's not there. And he's like, where's the prostitute that was there? And they said, there's not one. And so he runs around. He's like trying to find her. And so about 3 months later, Judah gets word Tamar has prostituted herself. Moreover, she's pregnant as a result of the prostitution. And Judah says, okay, we're going to burn her, which is extreme. Yes, it is extreme. It's extreme in the ancient world. This would be horrifying, and it gives you a little bit of a sense of the character of Judah. He's not the best. All of this shows that he's not the best. And then she sent word to her father-in-law. It was the owner of these who made me pregnant. And she says, take note, please, who these are, the signet and the cord and the staff. And then Judah says, oh my gosh, she is more in the right than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not lie with her again. And so when the time of her delivery comes, there were twins in her womb. And that is where we come back to this genealogy. Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. It doesn't say Judah, the father of and Onan and Shelah. It doesn't say that. Perez and Zerah by Tamar. This woman who bucked the trend, who stood up for herself and did what needed to be done to take care of herself, to honor her husband's legacy, all of that. This is this strong woman that put all kinds of things at risk, and not only at risk, but also just, I don't know. She is held up as someone who is worthy to be in Jesus's lineage. Matthew chooses her when he is constructing this lineage, this strong woman who is trying to do the right thing. Yeah. I love that story because that story highlights the cunningness, the craftiness of Tamar. And that feels right. You know, when there's injustice and you know that somebody has had to do something that's a little bit on the line to rectify the injustice, and you're like, I don't know if that, but you're at the gut level, you're like, actually, yes, there was injustice. It's been rectified, and it was a weird way that it had to happen, but I can't imagine another way. Yeah, maybe that was good and righteous and right. I mean, that's how Tamar is seen, elevated all the way to being in the genealogy of Jesus. So now Perez, her son by Judah, is father of Hezron. Hezron, the father of Aram. We're in Matthew chapter 1, verse 4. Aram, the father of Amminadab, and Amminadab, the father of Nahshon, and Nahshon, the father of Salmon, and Salmon, the father of Boaz by Rahab. Okay. Father of Boaz by Rahab. Rahab's another woman. We haven't gotten but just a couple of verses, and now we have another woman. It's not like Matthew started this genealogy and just sort of like threw in a woman. You've got Tamar a couple of verses later, Boaz, Salmon, the father of Boaz by Rahab. Oh, man. So if you remember Rahab's story, right? Rahab's story is profound. So there's a story in the book of Joshua where the people are, the God's people are trying to fight the people of Jericho. And they send spies in, and the spies are supposed to scout out the city before the Israelites attack. And when they go to Rahab's house. Rahab's house, it says they enter like through the, or eventually they leave through like her window. But Rahab sees these Israelite spies, and Rahab is a prostitute. That is the way she takes care of herself and her kids and makes her living in the world. And though it was not uncommon, it still was not what you wanted for your daughter. And it wasn't like being a super respectable woman. And so Rahab is holding these spies in her own home. Here's something interesting, a little bit of archaeology. They have done a dig that they believe is Jericho. And Jericho is actually a city with 2 city walls. And if you look at these, the diagrams, the sort of inner city wall and the structures inside it are nicer, are bigger, are more reinforced. And then the outer city wall, they're not so much. The outer city wall isn't as big. Those houses are not as nice. You really are in the bad part of town. And so for the spies to be able to escape, they have to be in this outer part of the city, in the bad part of town, which makes sense that that's where Rahab was. And Rahab saves these spies and is a central part of how all of that story comes about to the people of God defeating Jericho. And as a result, Rahab is brought into the people of God, even though she's not, okay? She is a Gentile. She is not even a Jewish person. She did not grow up in that world and in that culture. And that is a major deal because we see here in Jesus's genealogy, not just that there is a woman, Tamar, who is part of like the whole beginning and really part of the family of God from her marriage. No, we have now Rahab, who is a Canaanite prostitute from Jericho and is now been pulled into the work, the people of God in the world, like the chosen people. And Matthew says, you know her? Yeah, she was a part of it. She's an example of what we need to do and what we need to be in the world. Like when you see something that you know is the right thing, when you see people doing the right thing, but in order to engage with it, you have to do something that puts yourself at great personal risk. You do it. You hide the spies in your house. Yeah. And it also is a reminder to us that the people that our culture has lived on the wrong side of the tracks in the bad part of town, the people that our culture says their jobs are not clean or good or okay. Yeah. God will use them too. God will take those people and use them just like he would a pastor or a faithful person or whatever. And their acts will be just as holy as someone who looks holy on the outside. Yeah, like whenever you feel like you aren't holy enough to be involved in the works of God, you've done something horrible, you can't be part of it anymore. No, there isn't something there. Yeah, it's time for you to get up and get back engaged. All right, another woman. This time, she wasn't just a prostitute. She was a Gentile. All right, Salmon was the father of Boaz by Rahab, and then Boaz was the father of Obed by, wait for it, Ruth. Another woman. Like, we didn't even make it through another whole generation until we get another woman. We get Ruth. Oh my gosh. Ruth has this wonderful story. There is this Naomi. Naomi is Jewish. She has two sons. They go to Moab, and Moab is not an okay place. The people, the Bible says that the Moabites should not enter into the community of Jewish people, even to the 10th generation. Like, they should be so far removed. No one should ever marry a Moabite. You shouldn't go to Moab, and you definitely shouldn't marry a Moabite. Naomi takes her sons to Moab. They marry Moabite women. Oh, man. And then the sons die. And Naomi is destitute. Their wives are destitute. Naomi realizes the only thing she can do is go back home. And maybe her family will take her back in. And she tells her daughters-in-law, she says, hey, you should go back home. It's not going to be good. But Ruth the Moabite wife of Naomi's son, Ruth says, no, I'm not leaving you alone. Women who are alone in this world are in danger. We are doing this together. She says, where you go, I will go. It's just like beautiful moment. And so Ruth, the Moabite, and Naomi go back to Israel. And they're like gleaning in the fields. And then they're gleaning in the fields of a guy named Boaz. Boaz is a relative of Naomi's. And really, it feels like when you're reading the story, Boaz is the one. You know, when we talk about levirate marriage, that kind of idea, Boaz should be the one. And eventually, that's what happens. Ruth and Boaz have this, like, I don't know. When you read it, it's this, feels like this beautiful, tender, very loving moment where they come together, and it says, like, Boaz spread his cloak over her, and it's all of this, like, I don't know, very tender, very sweet, very beautiful depiction of them being intimate. And eventually they have a kid. But you remember what the problem is here? Boaz was not supposed to be with Ruth. Ruth should not have shown back up in Israel because Ruth was a Moabite, not to the 10th generation. She was so outside. This was so scandalous and horrible. And yet, Ruth provided for Naomi, came to Boaz, and Boaz risked it to do the right thing. Because sometimes the cultural norms for what is right are actually unjust. Right? Sometimes a culture that says, I'm sorry, you have to reject all of these people based on some random piece of data. Yeah. It's not okay. It's not okay. So another strong woman, another story of an outsider being brought inside. And that is the person that Matthew chooses, another woman. We're 3 women in. We're 3 women deep here. And so Boaz, the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of who? King David. We have now King David. We're to the peak, right? Everybody feels like David is the peak of the monarchy and all of the story. And then it says, and David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah. The wife of Uriah. Oh my gosh. Now, okay, she's not named, but her story is right here. The wife of Uriah. The wife of Uriah, aka Bathsheba. The story of Bathsheba, holy cow. David, the king, looks out while he should have been in battle with his troops. He wasn't. He had stayed back. The troops were in battle. And he goes out and he sees a woman that is naked and taking a bath. And he says, oh, wow, she's beautiful. I want her. And he has her brought to him. And then he finds out it's the wife of Uriah, and he's like, okay, whoa, okay. So then he brings Uriah, and he's trying to get Uriah to go and sleep with his wife because David has slept with her, and she's pregnant, and he wants it to seem like it's Uriah's kid, but Uriah doesn't do it. So Uriah leaves, having not been with his wife, and David sends him with a letter that says, like, put him on the front line, then retreat from him so that he dies. David murders Uriah by this sort of this order of the king. And then Bathsheba has Solomon. Yeah. Solomon, the wise king. You know that guy. Yeah. Yeah. We've got now Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba. Oh my gosh. Bathsheba does this. There's this whole thing where David is confronted and shamed, and wow. Bathsheba goes toe to toe with the king. If that's not a strong woman, I don't even know, right? I don't even know. And then it keeps going. And Matthew is leading somewhere. He leads up to, and Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, who bore Jesus, who is called the Messiah. Yeah. Matthew's genealogy ends with a woman. Matthew is saying things are changing. And as much as it is possible for there to be a feminist genealogy in this very patriarchal world, we have it, right? There's a lot of men. Don't get me wrong. All the rest of the names are men. And I get it. That's what you would expect. That is what you expect from a patriarchal culture. It's not a surprise that there are a lot of men. It is a surprise. It is an unusual choice to have all of these women in here. And what Matthew is saying by that is there is an expansion of who is used by God that is happening in Jesus. Because we don't just have women. Some of these women are Moabites. Some of these women are just Gentile. Like everybody. The ones you expect, like Isaac and Abraham and David, and the ones you don't expect. The prostitutes, the women who stood up to the men in their life, even when those men were the king, right? The women who were crafty, these people who were dealt an awful hand and stood up, like those people, the people who the actual law of the Bible was trying to exclude, those people. Jesus is breaking down all of the walls between God and humanity. That's what this is saying. And it's saying that through these women in a patriarchal culture. Yeah. I told you this genealogy is something else, right? And so for us, while we're trying to figure out how we live in this world, the genealogy says to us one of the most important things that we can do, one of the sort of default orientations that we need to have, is that we don't try to separate people from God. There isn't anything that can come between God and humanity. No more. And anytime we think, oh, but those people, nope, not them. Oh, but that person, they have a career that's, oh, nope. Everybody, absolutely everybody is welcome. And it is our job as, if you are a person that wants to follow the story of Jesus and try to live that out, even if you aren't a Christian, even if you know that, like, okay, the story of Jesus is something that is helpful and instructive, but you're not a Christian, that's fine. This part of the story says, everybody gets access to the divine. And don't you dare try to put up a barrier. When somebody says, I actually find God more in nature, than in church. You say, yeah, no, I get that. And they say, I you know what? I find God, I experience God more when I am protesting injustice than when I've ever been in a church. You say, yeah. No, I get it. God's there. God's there too. That's it. Nothing, no one is kept out. Even the people that mess up and do horrible things, right? Judah, perfect example, mess up, horrible things. David messed up, horrible things. And of course, when they mess up, they do horrible things. Who's hurt? Yeah. It's the people who are always hurt. But even those people are not on the outside of what God is doing, because everyone gets to have access to the divine. Everyone gets to be used by God if they want to be used by God. And sometimes even if they don't. So yeah, feminist genealogy in the book of Matthew. Hey, one of the things about our community, we call it Not Church, is that we talk about this kind of stuff. We push back. We are there for each other. Sometimes people are in a hard place. And we just have to be there for each other, because that's what you have to do. We do that through Discord, and it is a beautiful place. There are people that claim to be Christian, people that claim to be agnostics, all kinds of people. If you would love to have a place like that, we call it Not Church, because it's like all the things you want from a church without people telling you you're going to hell because you believe the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. Yeah, you'd love it there. You do that by going to patreon.com/skepticpastor, and it's $3 a month. $3 a month, because we're not going to ask you to give us a percentage of your income. You pay for what you get. And and that is the way it goes. Also, we just released some new products. They say, I'm a deep skeptic, also a Christian. There's even a Bible cover. If you're interested in that stuff, like a t-shirt or a mug that says, I'm a deep skeptic, also a Christian, you can go to noomacommunity.com/store, NOOMA community.com/store. You can get them there. And, if you're listening to this, give us all the stars. Say a nice thing, like actually make a comment. All those things really do help. That's it. That's the podcast. Shout out to the Choir Network, to Patheos, to Matthew and Keith, who make everything happen. Now, get out of here. Go do something to make the world a better place. Okay? We'll see you next time.